Today, I'm sitting with someone whose work has deeply influenced me. Sam Daghash doesn't just talk about the mind, he understands how it shapes energy, emotion, and the way we show up as leaders. And as a student of his work, I wanted this conversation to be personal and practical. So founders, leaders, high achievers who want to change their lives yet keep falling back into old patterns can really get value from this. Sam is a globally recognized alignment and breakthrough specialist, a lead performance coach, and founder of New Mind, which is a transformative brand built to liberate individuals from unconscious limitations, recondition identity, and activate true personal and financial freedom. Over the past 7 years, he has become a trusted partner for founders and executives in the field of deep identity recalibration, neurotransformational coaching, and human optimization. I cannot wait for you to listen to him. Sam, thank you so much for being here. I'm really happy to have you there.
Yeah, thank you for the invite. It's always a pleasure to connect with you and to have these conversations on camera. For me, it's the same thing. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I know that when we have our conversations as friends and a bit also as you're my mentor in some ways, I always go home so inspired. So that's really, the idea that I want for this podcast. I want the people to listen to this and learn and feel inspired and also feel like they have a bit of a toolbox, a bit of a practice, a bit of a reflection, so they were not the same people before and after listening to it. That would be my goal for today, yeah?
Yeah, I love it. Move with intention. Well, again, thank you for having me. And, what I always say is information, when done with intention, can really create some form of transformation, as long as people are tuning in and listening and taking some of the deeper insights that we would share, but perhaps from today's conversation.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yes. So you do a lot of things when we talk about neuroscience. We talk about identity reprogramming. We even talk about quantum physics. Those are all like very complex terms that I would not be taking the chance to actually explain. But could you explain a bit all of this if I was 5 years old maybe?
Sure. So to simplify it, Mathieu, the most important thing is to understand that there are tools out there. There are multiple modalities that ultimately do specific things to us as an identity, as a person. So everyone's different. At the end of the day, we need to understand the basic foundation starts with our conditioning, right? So everyone's conditioned differently to show up in the world at a specific identity. So all of those domains that you refer to are simply domains that I had the privilege to learn and from really powerful mentors around the world that has given me the understanding of what these knowledge and tools can do for us to shift us. It's just what I use at my practice, right? So what it boils down to is, for me, getting into alignment, getting into the true, authentic self without the noise, without the monkey mind.
Yes.
Everyone has a different approach, but ultimately what we're all seeking is we're seeking to be our true, authentic selves. So that would be the nutshell of what that encompasses at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So fighting against the monkey mind, removing the autopilot, taking ownership, being intentional. Why is this important as a leader, as an entrepreneur watching this? Why is this so important to my success?
Well, you said something very interesting, removing autopilot. We can't remove autopilot. Autopilot will always be there. But the idea is, what autopilot, what default setting are we setting ourselves for, right? So my role, for example, when I work with entrepreneurs and business leaders, is I understand, first and foremost, we get clear on what the objective is. What are they trying to bring into this world, right? As the identity, but as the mission, the intention. When we get clarity with that, then we start to go, well, what are the things that we need to know about the autopilot, the subconscious mind, the unconscious? Because 95% of who we are is a set of programs, right? It's a set of unconscious processes that are happening all the time. So what we want is we want those unconscious processes, those programs, to be working in our service, towards what we want, not towards what we don't want. And a lot of the times we are unaware, or there are blind spots for leaders and entrepreneurs that they are not even aware of, that they're working against themselves. So the idea is clarity and then utilizing and literally programming their subconscious mind, or the unconscious mind is, in my model world, I call it the unconscious mind, the terminology that is more deeper, more encompass of the depth of who we are. And then from that space, Mattia is bringing in forth what it is they want, and then utilizing the greater mind to their service, not against them.
Yes, let's get really practical and let's get into the real experience.
Yeah.
I came to you for a private session, which is like, I'm still mind blown. I was like a month ago, and the before and after is incredible. So thank you for that.
Thank you for showing up.
You talk about the conditioning that I wasn't aware. So I came to you with a specific problem, which was related to injuries and which was related to migraines. All of those two parts were preventing me, and I could feel it. My body was telling me, you can't be the person you want to be. You cannot be a marathon runner because of your knee. You cannot compete at paddle because of my shoulder. And you cannot enjoy freediving because of my migraines. And we go into that session. What happens in there?
Well, first of all, we need to identify that there is something within us that what we call our internal perception, right? So we all have a self-image of that we hold inside of us. Some of people are clear of it, some are not. But it's about defining the relationship with that part of you. So when you came up, if you allow me to share,
yes,
right?
Of course, please do.
So when you came up, for example, the problems you had, you felt stuck, right? You felt blocked, you felt frustrated, right? So first and foremost, there was a lot of tension in your nervous system, in the body, right? Remember, the body is the unconscious mind, right? So if I'm feeling certain negative emotions around something that I can't seem to overcome, what's happening is the body is stuck in that experience, right? So first and foremost, through the process that we did, which is known as a breakthrough and release session that I do, which is the ability first and foremost is to free the body from that tension, from that emotion, right? Because first of all, you have to free the body from the emotional state that it's stuck in the past. And then what you do is then you rewire and you recalibrate the mind and the focus to what it is you want. So in your context, for example, without going into too much depth, but what we needed to do is first release your nervous system from the emotion, which you had the feeling. Remember when we did the layers? But then also there was the self-perception, the decision you made subconsciously about this problem. So what we did is we went to the root cause using the subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind, just for those who are watching or listening, has all the answers. It literally has all the data. And if you learn through modalities like what I do, how to speak to that part of the mind and how to navigate that part of the mind to go to the root cause of what's holding you back from expressing yourself, loving yourself, accepting yourself to the fullest that you can, it almost frees you, and all of a sudden you realize I was the one in the way. And I think that was the case for you. And you, even in the room, honestly, Mattia, you shifted energetically. You were like, it was a bit of an awakening, and you took some time to integrate. I know that, but generally speaking, that's you liberating and having a direct one-on-one healthy relationship with the self. Within the body started to go, oh, so you're not resentful towards me anymore. You're actually loving me and accepting me for who I am. And you know I'm doing the best I can at this stage. So the moment you change that relationship dynamically, then you become on the same team. You're not playing against each other. And that was pretty much a little summary without getting into the tools, but that was pretty much what happened. But we use neurological tools. We use proper tools that speaks the language of the subconscious mind. Because there's one thing about telling someone to stop or change and do this, that's conscious. You have to learn, how do I speak to the greater part of my mind, which will ultimately create the shift. And that's what you experience.
Absolutely. And what is really interesting is that this is not traditional therapy. We didn't go and for like 10 hours you're talking to me. You actually went into my subconscious, and I feel it and I felt it. And dude, I haven't had any migraines or any injuries for the last month. Yeah, exactly.
That's beautiful.
And I can feel that difference. Right? So that is the part that is hard to explain.
It's hard and it's not hard, right? Because if you think about it, obviously you have to have the experience to feel that shift. But ultimately what we need to understand is that we have multiple states, Mattia, right? And each state has a unique signature. signature. And each state, so if I'm sitting with a state of Mathieu, which is a program that is a frustrated person that is always pushing and it's not enough and I want more and this and that, that state is a resentful, not satisfied, not good enough state. So anything you do in the outside world or anything you do in the internal world is not enough. So that not enoughness doesn't bring a full sense of contempt and satisfaction.
It was bringing a lot of frustration.
It was bringing a lot of frustration, right? So when you think about that on a logical sense, what we're doing is we're changing and framing and bringing in a different state of being that is more surrendering, more relaxed, more compassionate, and the thinking starts to change. When you change how you think, you change how you feel. And because I always say this to my clients and students, we're always feeling our thinking.
Yeah.
So if you're stuck in a thought pattern that is a negative loop thought pattern, ultimately that's where the work needs to happen. You need to snap out of it and you need to introduce something new. And that's pretty much what happened in our context.
I love what you said. When you change how you think, you change how you feel, and you also change how you act.
Of course.
Afterwards.
100%.
And what we're sharing here is an example which is related to sports and performance.
100%.
But we all know how sports performance as an analogy translates really well in business.
100%.
And this has also shifted my perspective on my business. I can recognize so much faster now the same feelings and the same emotion, frustration, anger, and all of those things. One example, the fear of commitments. I get frustrated when people who tell I will join your program then are not able to commit and all of this, right? So I could put this outward, but now I've put this back inward into readiness and into who are actually the people I want to help, while the people I want to help are the people that are ready to help themselves.
Yes.
Which is a big shift from this, right?
100%. And not taking it personal, right? The thing is, what happens for most entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders, especially those that are starting out, is in the beginning. And I was there once. I've learned this the hard way. I've been running my own businesses now, going into my 8th year, 9 years. And I understand in the beginning, we take things personal because we start to go, well, if they didn't want to work with me, or if they didn't buy my services or products or opted in, then there's something wrong with me. Right? We subconsciously go there, but the reality is it's not the case. It's just the resonance, and it's a learning process of us learning how to explain, add value, and also be okay with understanding that you have a message to give to the world. And you have a great one, by the way, Mathieu, what you're doing with conscious leaders. And I think that's why I resonate. That's why I'm here. I love the intention behind it. But at the same time, you want to put that message out and you want to attract your tribe. You want to attract the people that resonate with you, and you don't want to force it, because the moment you force something, you create resistance, you create desperation, you create a sense of this is not, you actually end up attracting the wrong leaders. So that starts to shift. It's like more self-trust in what I'm putting out and believing that my message is with intention, and it is, and I'm going to make a difference, and you do. And that's what happens naturally speaking. You start to gravitate and you attract those of that match that frequency.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I really feel like through your mentoring, you're giving me a toolbox, which is an inner toolbox. I don't know how I would call it, right? But about how to understand the coherence between my mind and my body,
Yes,
which
brain
is
and heart.
helping me changing my identity as per that example, right?
Yeah.
So we're doing a lot of that work, and we talked about change and commitments.
Yes.
I have this picture, this meme about people at the stadium. There is this, what do you call it, ticket stand that says, who wants change? And there's everyone that is packed waiting for them. And then there's a second ticket stand that says, who actually wants to do the change? And there's no one in there, right? You've seen that
I haven't
picture?
really, but
No?
it's interesting. Okay.
The idea is we all want change, but when it's time to actually do it, crickets, much less people. What would you say is, what is happening in someone's mind? Because we really desire that change.
Yeah.
What happens in someone's mind and energetically, I guess, when it's actually time to do it?
Very good question, Mathieu. And I think this is a common pattern, because everyone out there, if you stop anyone in the world and Do you want to better yourself? They'll say yes. No one would say no to that. So there's two main reasons. I would say actually is a primary reason if you want to go into the psycho-cybernetic mechanism of the mind, right? So basically what happens is, and the way the mind works, remember, I always use this metaphor, the mind is the software, the brain is the hardware. So we need to understand that the brain is functionality, the unconscious mind's prime directive is to reserve energy. It wants to always keep you in what we call the familiar, okay? Even if your familiar is something that's not serving you today, being it a job, being it a relationship, being it where you, any aspect of yourself. So the moment you want, which is the conscious mind, I want change, everybody wants change, but the moment that opportunity arises, the moment there is actually work to be done, the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind, what it's definedly meant to do is keep you in the familiar. So it will come up with reasons, excuses, 100%, and also emotion. A lot of people don't know this, but a lot of emotion as well. So it uses the emotional response as well as the mental response, meaning the thought process, to say to you, hey, it's not for you, or maybe not now, or leave it till tomorrow, or maybe this is not the right time, or maybe there's something fishy with that person and can't trust other people. Whatever it is, it will fully come into the display to keep you in that familiar and to keep you from actually creating change.
That's basically self-sabotage, right?
100%. And it's a very common pattern for a lot of leaders and a lot of entrepreneurs and actually a lot of people in general, because they know they're doing it to themselves, but they remain stuck until you have a person profile, until the pain becomes greater than the comfort. So then they knock on my door, or they actually wake up to the realization that they can't change by themselves and they need support, which we all do. All of us need some support. And a lot of times we need to understand the mechanics of our mind. So when we understand the mechanics of our mind, that our mind needs to change and on a deeper level, not on just a wishful thinking level, then we are able to actually create and follow up with the change that we want in our life, right? No matter what that is.
So you're basically saying that all change is driven by pain, and the biggest pain is the biggest actor for change?
I would say not all change is driven by pain, but I would say a lot of change is driven by pain, frustration, real deep emotion that the body can no longer handle, or the giving up and the deep realization that I need another approach to get me off the line, to get to change something within me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it's also early in your journey through personal development, because today, to be honest, I don't feel like I'm doing those changes because of pain.
Yes.
Or at least not such level of pains where I need to be in the hospital in order to start making changes.
100%.
I'm thinking about someone who's smoking and then has a lung cancer and then says, I'm done with it.
Yes.
Well, I would do those changes much earlier, right? But it's really interesting because you're basically saying the brain decides, this is your brain, right? I desire this, but also your brain is telling you, no, you're not going to have this. So, and this is what is not happening.
Correct. But it's the conscious mind. So the conscious mind is, I know this is better for me. And the subconscious mind, which is the greater mind, which is the one in charge, if it has limiting decisions, limiting beliefs, if it has fear in the nervous system, if it has doubt, if it has limitation in self-belief.
Which all come from past experiences, 100%. Things that they have told you.
Conditioning, childhood, how your relationship with your parents, with your society, with your school, all of this, we call this a level of conditioning. Yeah. So the identity, the self-image, right? If the self-image doesn't match the change of the future self that you want, there's going to be a disconnect and you will stay in the old because the old is familiar. The old is familiar. Even if the old is not serving you as an identity, it's still safe for the body. It's comfortable, right? Yeah. So when we understand that comfort, when it becomes uncomfortable, Mathieu, when it becomes challenging to a degree where the pain becomes larger, the pain, when I say pain, it doesn't have to be physical pain. It can be mental
but the
pain.
Frustration as well, or the discomfort.
Exactly. Discomfort becomes more, then you're like, okay, I need to do this. Or get the other side, which is what, for example, with the men's workshop, is we pointed out the clarity of what it is you want. So you become more clear with the future vision of who you want to be. And then you start to map out the gap. So you start to go, oh, that's who I want to be. And the more clear who you want to be, the easier it becomes to understand what are the steps that I need to take to get there. That's
I know you also work with this, and I work a lot with that part, is to try to create that fire burning as well.
100%.
Right? Because
100%.
Also the fire is what compensates or goes against
Yes.
all of the issues and the traumas and the
Yes.
negative emotions.
Yes.
When you're fully driven
Yes.
by a purpose, and we both are,
Yeah.
which is what
Yeah.
gets us to wake up every morning, right?
100%.
That's where it makes sense, and that's where you feel unshakable. Right?
100%. You use the word unshakable, correct. That's the truth. When you are in alignment with your mission and your intention, and you're connected to the fire in your belly, that's where no matter what happens in your day, in your week, in your month, you just keep going at it because you believe in yourself and you believe in the mission, and you keep going. And then that's what we call about that gap analysis, where all of a sudden it transforms. But the most important person to believe in the mission and the intention and the purpose is you. It doesn't matter if others believe in you. It's great. It's a bonus. But the most important thing is you. If you believe in it and you're going out there to make a difference, to make a world a better place, or whatever your mission is as an entrepreneur or a leader, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It ultimately drives you there.
I'm smiling because I go back to my life in Valencia when my environment was not really supportive of this and my ambition and me wanting to do greater things, like sharing these conversations. I don't want to have this just for myself. So you need to do podcasts. There's a way that you need to share, right?
Of course.
And I've never thought I would do a podcast. That is one thing. But I said I want to move to Dubai because this is the place where the leaders are, and I know I can help them.
Yes.
And the people were pulling me back down and say, stop with your ambition. Come and drink a beer with us. Just play paddle with us. Just, So that was that belief that actually drove me there. And then, of course, I changed my environment to be now surrounded with supportive people like yourself who are enablers of this identity. But you're right, that starts with you. That starts with the belief.
It starts with you, but to be very fair, it's a very great point you bring up environment, Mattia, because to be honest with you, environment is part of what we call conditioning, right?
Yeah.
So your environment, the people you surround yourself with, the conversations you have, has to be in service of your mission and intention. If not, you need to do something about it. I always say this to my students and clients. I can help you as much as I can in the room, but you have a responsibility to enforce your boundaries in your environment, because if you don't, it's like taking 2 steps forward and take 1 step back. So you have to be able to do an audit. I always say this, do an audit in your environment, have the right people that believe in the mission or believe in you or lift you up and see that in you and encourage you. And I've been there. Everything you're sharing, I have been there. When I did my shift, a decade ago, a lot of people thought I was losing my mind, leaving the corporate world. I was a regional director. I was earning everything. I ticked all the boxes of what societal expectations were. And then deep inside, I was unhappy and I wasn't living in purpose. And when you can't fight that feeling of not living in purpose, and that's why when I shifted, I needed to really cut out a lot of noise to ensure that I remain on the path. Otherwise, we can easily go back, because you're already having to fight your mind. You're already having to convince yourself that this is the right path, right? And then if you have everything else outside of you working against you, it makes it harder. So the best message I can share to our listeners or viewers is that environment is a really big element in your journey, especially if you are moving into change.
And we're not talking about necessarily moving to Dubai.
No,
we're talking about what you consume online and on your phone and the place around you, right?
Everything really, from content to people to environment to, and this is what I love about Dubai, because one thing about Dubai that is really amazing is the environment gives you a sense that there is that hunger out there for entrepreneurs. Everyone is a go-getter. Everyone's here to make and to better their life. There's a frequency in the air.
There's an energy there, right? Which I've never seen anywhere.
Which you won't find it in Europe. I mean, you might find it in certain parts of the US, to be fair. When I used to go to the US quite a bit, I noticed that sort of hunger. But generally, it's very rare to find this energy of go, but also better, expand. You know what I mean? And that's, for me, one of the reasons, to be very honest, where I decided to stay put in this environment, because it almost has that influence on you, whether subconsciously or consciously, but it's influencing you to be driven.
Yeah. I love that you talk about this go as a fuel for growth and for change and for improvements, which is why I'm here. I'm loving it every day, right? But when I talk to a lot of leaders, and you do too, right? This go also feels an endless path unsustainable choices, burning them slowly, right? So it feels, I have this analogy, like this vision of a yo-yo. I'm burnt out and I need to rest because my body can't take it anymore. And on the other side, now I'm ready. Let's go again. Let's do it. Let's change the world and follow the pace of Dubai. So how do we sustain all of this? What are the practical tools we can maybe bring in there so we can move with sustainable effort to still achieve your goals? We all high achievers in here, but come on, you cannot be 6 months stopped.
To be honest with you, when I work with entrepreneurs in this perspective or business owners, it's always a challenge, right? The reason it's a challenge is because they have, and this is not a judgment, I myself fall into this trap sometimes, but when you are your own entrepreneur, when you are your own boss, there's almost this mindset that I don't have anyone checking in on me, so I have to hold myself at the highest level, right? So I have to keep going, right? So I was once there, but what happens is, thankfully, through my knowledge and the work I do, I realized that in order to succeed and actually go further in life, you need to have a balance, right? A balance. And balance comes into many forms, right? So it comes into structure. It comes into certain practices you include in your day, and it comes into the deep understanding that in order for you to be in full alignment, part of the alignment aspect of self is the ability to understand that doing nothing is very productive. Sometimes doing nothing is very productive, and that's where it's hard for some people to digest. When I talked about doing nothing, I'm not saying as in not working and being present, not working and being with family, not working and having a conversation that's outside of work with a good friend, for example. But practices that I incorporate in my practice, as in personally and in the work I do, per example, is a simple 10-minute guided breath practice, brain and heart coherence, which I learned under the Dr. Joe Dispenza, for example, or Greg Braden. These are very simple tools that really calm the nervous system and create a reset of the brain and the mind, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like a computer. If your computer is always on, all the tabs are on, you are fragmented. So even if you want to achieve something, you're jumping from one thing to the other, you're not moving anywhere. So when you start to give it a reason why you need to sit for 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, and you need to calm the nervous system, get coherence in the brain, what that does, Mattia, it actually benefits you throughout your journey of being productive. So when we change that in that understanding of finding balance equals more productivity for an entrepreneur or a leader, then they start to buy into the idea and it becomes easier for them to apply. Does it make sense?
So for me, it makes sense. It's very clear that when you take a step back, you are able to recharge. So then you can make 3 steps forward.
Yes.
But in practice, that conversation with leaders is like, yeah, I get that, but they still don't do it.
I think they don't do it because they don't know the value of it, to be very open with you, or they haven't experienced it, or they think it's a woo, or it's a generalized thing. But when you understand the science, this is why for me in my line of work, I am very much driven by science, right? So when I explain to an entrepreneur or a leader like yourself, and I go, listen, sit down and understand what's happening in your brain. Understand that when you do these practices, you're actually creating much more of a smarter brain, a more coherent brain. Do you want more opportunities in your day? Yes. As an entrepreneur, do this practice. Do you want to be more creative?
Yeah.
You do that because there are certain brain waves that access certain ways of thinking. So when they understand that it's actually a hack, it's actually to advantage of business, then the mindset shifts, Mattia. Then they start to give it a go. But generally throughout conversation, unless they sit down and try it and understand the value of what they're doing for themselves, for their nervous system, for their health, for their well-being, but more importantly, for the acceleration of the business, because we need to move away from the old way of thinking and being the old paradigm of go, 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 go. And we need to understand that we are moving into a whole new paradigm. Especially now with AI coming into play, we need to really understand that we need to upgrade our own software. And if we're not upgrading our own software, if we don't know how to, if we don't understand that there's tools out there to do that, we're going to fall behind and everyone else is going to just go past us. So understanding that it's having those moments in your day, in your week that is literally carved out. I have it in my calendar, Mattia, because I know myself. I'm a busy person. So in my calendar, I literally have it mapped out 20 minutes, which is a guided experience. I do 15 minutes breath, before bedtime I do something, because the way I operate is I have to have a sort of framework. Otherwise I get lost. So I have it literally in calendar. I even have my own time with my own family in the calendar. And I know it sounds crazy, but it has to be there because it's commitment.
It has to be there for you.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. It's not a recommendation for everyone to do that.
Yes, it's not a recommendation, but for me, I found that personal, as a person running multiple platforms and businesses, etc., I found that organization and commitment and mapping it out tends to make it easy for you. Because when it pops up in my calendar, oh, I've got to do my 15 minutes break. I stop everything I'm doing and I go there and I do that. Because I know that 10 minutes I'm taking out, or that 15 minutes or that 20 minutes, whatever the activity is, I know it's going to improve my productivity. It's going to make me happier. I'm going to be in a better state, and my brain is going to work better. It's actually practical and much more easier, to be honest.
It just works for you because you don't have to have this fight with your mind about should we do it, should we not do it. No, this is just like
non-negotiable.
It's non-negotiable.
I have a non-negotiable, a great book that I would encourage guys to listen. I'm trying to remember now. It slipped my mind, but it was a great book. But it's the book that basically Atomic Habits. I've learned a lot from Atomic Habits that help me compound these things. Great book. If those who haven't listened or read it, I would encourage them to check it out.
It's interesting. Let's go because I'm the other way of you.
Yeah.
And I also want to bring that, so there's different ways of doing it. Because for me and for a lot of people, those kinds of commitments, even when you say 10 minutes breath work, 10 minutes meditation, body coherence, I've done that, by the way, while you were mentoring me properly, right? But after a certain time, for me, it loses its value. I feel like I'm doing this because it's more like robotical, I lose the intention, and it more feels like a burden. And this is what happens to a lot of people. Then they fail and they're like, I cannot do meditation anymore. Then I'm a failure because I know this is needed and I cannot do it. So even in your mind, you solidify a new conditioning. I cannot even do the things that are good for me. But for me now, I think I'm finding my way where I'm able to check in with myself about my energy, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. And at 10 times per day, because also I have the chance as an entrepreneur to be flexible enough to be like, what's going on? What do I need? And then I'm like, I'm going to go for 20 minutes, do a breath work. Or now, for example, we have this podcast. I know, because I know myself, afterwards, it's just time with my partner, with my dog. We're just going to go and enjoy, a bit of nature and etc.
Beautiful. Blessing.
So you are the strict one. Calendar says this and I follow, and I'm the fully opposite one. My body needs this right now, which might be, I'm not doing my accounting right now. I'll do it tomorrow because I don't have that mental capacity to do that. For the reverse, now I'm actually creative. So there's different ways, and that's what I like is we listen to the big influencers who tell us this is what you need to do. You don't. What you need to do is experiment.
Yes.
So you can find yourself after, right?
100%. And for me, to be very open with you, the reason I say I put it on the calendar is after trial and tribulation, right? So I have tried, for example, now with time, I know with experience that the best time for me to do coherence is a specific time of the day. I know that there's a specific breath practice that I do prior to going into session, for example. So I have done it and tested, and I start to recognize what works best for me, right? I'm not saying this is everyone should do, but what I'm saying is the way it becomes with time, it becomes a pattern. And remember, the mind works in patterns. So the best way to be consistent is to create, and habitual, the mind's habitual, is to create patterns. And that's just as per how the mind works. So for me, I realized with time, if I just know that in my rise, when I wake up, I want to start my day without looking at my phone, and I want to start my day in a more productive way, in a coherent way, because it's going to elevate my energy. I just know the morning time is super important for me to do a practice. And if I miss my practice, and I have, like everyone else, I'm sure, I notice there's a shift. But I would not notice the shift if I wasn't consistent in it, right? Exactly. So you have to find a level of consistency and trial to see, is this going to be beneficial or not? And it can't go, I'm just going to try brain and heart coherence, for example, for one day, and go, oh, you know what, I didn't feel it, it's not great, I'm not going to do it. That's what most people do. The way you do it is like everything else in life. You need to test drive it. You need to run with it. You need to give it a real time on it and off it. And then you go, when was it most beneficial for me? when do I need to tweak it? Maybe I need to change the timing. Maybe I need to rather do this instead of that. So that's with trial. I just want to be very clear with that. It's not just something that I need to follow the book. And, you know what I mean?
And also it changes. I remember I was in Germany in the wintertime, Berlin.
Yeah.
I started doing this meditation practice, 20 minutes every morning before I actually go on the metro, cold, gray. The world is, you know, the face like the world is ending. And then you go to your office and your day starts. And at 3 p.m. the day is over because there's no more light, but you're still working. So you feel like disconnect. I did this for 60 days, I think it was, the meditation. And I could feel that. But that doesn't mean I'm still meditating all the time. It's also understanding that at some times of your life,
you need
some things.
Of course.
And being too strict with it is actually becoming a bit of a
I don't believe in strictness. I don't believe in being militant, because you just have to be honest with yourself. If this practice is serving me today, great. If it's no longer serving me and I need to do something else, that's also fine. But the idea, going back to what we're talking about, is having balance, right? Is not doing too much of one thing. You know, I know I've had clients and students where they're in meditation, they're spending 3-4 hours a day. I mean, yeah, that's great, but that's also taking away from other aspects of the life. So too much of anything, as they say, is not good. So it's finding your balance that brings you to be the best version of yourself in this world, that you can give the best output, whatever that may be.
Absolutely. And talking about balance, because I feel like there is this ideal about balance is that thing in the middle, which I don't think is existing. It's an ideal of that full balance in every aspect of our life. I love, you've met Linda, you know, who's also another expert in the program. She talks about this pendulum of consciousness and how going one way has this one energy, and then you're trying to find the balance the other way, but that's also going to swing you back and forth. And we always have momentum. We always carry momentum. There's never a moment when you're still, right?
Yeah.
So the balance is an ideal, and I feel like it's about recognizing that once you go too far one way, this is now the moment to go the other way, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's no perfect thing as long as it makes sense to you in terms of the balance you bring for yourself. The moment you go too much, I call them polarities, right? So you're going either one side or the other and you get pulled. The issue with that is also when you get pulled to one, you also develop a certain mindset and a certain level of awareness. So it isn't always on process to be very open, right? So that's okay. It's just a matter of being honest and truthful with ourselves.
So what do you think is missing for entrepreneurs and leaders who are going, like trying to punch the wall? This is the way and I'm going through that and burning themselves out. What do you think is missing from them? A reflection, a thoughts? What should they do to reassess and make sure that they're going on the right path and have this right balance?
Well, I think the easy answer for this is to first and foremost check in on themselves and go, are they enjoying the process? Right? Because being an entrepreneur is a tough thing. It's not easy. Entrepreneurs, you know, I had a guest on my podcast also, you know, 90% of entrepreneurs fail, right? And the reason they fail is because they put so much in to get to a stage and then they burn out and then they don't have energy to actually build the business. They don't have energy to move forward with it, right? So the idea is to understand that in order to succeed as an entrepreneur, you have to have a different mindset and you have to have a different way of looking at things where you go, I need to be able to be clear with where I'm going, but also in the process of moving towards the outcome you want, you're not beating yourself up and you're not in a stressful state and a narrow focused state, because you're supposed to enjoy the journey, even though it's a hard one, but you're supposed to be enjoying it, because when you're enjoying it, your energy is different. When you're enjoying it, your mindset is different. Then you start to see opportunities and possibilities and you attract the right people and it starts to change the dynamic. But when it's a fight, and this is what I don't agree with, like entrepreneurship, that has to be a fight, it has to be a hustle and a struggle. That's again old paradigm, man. Like, no, it doesn't. Yes, it takes work like everything else in life, but it doesn't have to be a challenge. And you'll find some entrepreneurs that I've worked with over the years, they were like, you know, I'm going to be unlocking a new challenge tomorrow and, you know, I'm going to break through this. And I'm going to, even the words they use is hard. Hustle, challenge, I'm going to kill it. And this and that, like these words are like really quite, even when you say them in the body, the nervous system is like, okay, I'm ready to fight now, fight or flight. No. You bring in flow, bring in a different approach to bring in more ease into the process.
I love that. I've never actually thought about it that way, because indeed, when we make a challenge, when we decide for it, it has this very masculine energy.
Yeah,
right?
and it's like, oh, well, you know, I'm gonna kill it. I'm gonna challenge it. I'm gonna fight. There's always those heavier words that actually the nervous system is not really comfortable with it, right? So it's like priming yourself.
Yeah.
Again, words and linguistics is priming, right?
Yeah.
We need to be conscious about the language we use internally and even externally as leaders or entrepreneurs. If we're speaking to those right now, that is a massive shift just in terms of framing it differently in your mind.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I did a podcast with Manmeet. We talked about balancing of the emotions, which is very similar, right? And she was telling me, especially me, I'm someone who gets really into with inner fire, and then I want to do it and change the world and have this incredible energy. She was telling me about how this is actually unsustainable, because then on the first crash, it feels like, well, you're falling from a cliff, right? And it has this big gap of expectations versus reality. So she was telling me, without destroying that fire completely, but also think about the other parts, the side of the coin, just in order to continue with those emotions. And this is what you're saying. At the end, this is a positive emotion, but this is not an overwhelming emotion, which gets your body on fire, literally, right?
And you said something key about expectation. I think that's another one that we all fall victim to sometimes, is we set certain expectations out there, and when they're not met, we unconsciously create a meaning that we are a failure, or it's not working, why am I doing something wrong, etc. So also managing expectations for leaders and entrepreneurs out there is super important, because you want to create the vision, but also create realistic milestones that create the momentum and the enjoyment of the process, rather than the disappointment, because one disappointment can bring you down.
Yeah.
When you're overfired up and you don't get the answer you want, you feel like, oh my God, you know, it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
But it's because you put in too much expectation of what you expect. I'm not saying not to have expectation. I'm saying have realistic ones, but also purely because you do not want to find yourself in any sense of disappointment.
Yeah, exactly. You get fired up and then you get so disappointed. It actually brings you down, but also it makes the next commitment harder.
100%.
Right?
100%.
And that's just because you've set the bar a bit too high and you didn't really go progressively, right?
Yeah, and you judge yourself. You know, when you're setting out there, there's an unconscious process of it becomes about you, and it's not about you all the time. It becomes about, oh, what could I do better? How come so I'm not good enough in what I'm approaching. So then it becomes an internal negative spiral of dialogue, which we don't want.
Yeah. So is there one thing you would like to tell an entrepreneur, a leader, especially with all of those hundreds of leaders you're helping, you see the patterns, right? I'm ready to jump, but I'm still uncertain. What is this one thing you would want to tell them so they feel like they can commit, or they can slow down, or they can start doing a bit of a change, but in a way that feels, as we said, comfortable and energetically balanced? What would you say to these people?
This is you know, you could go on multiple dimensions in this one, to be honest with you. But for me, what I found is that the most important thing is to align the entrepreneurial mission, or what it is you want to create. It needs to align with your purpose. It needs to align with the authenticity of who you are. So it needs to be yours, not someone else's idea. It needs to be coming from your heart. And the best thing, one of my mentors helped me in over the years to ensure that I stay in alignment is always following the path of the heart, right? So if I am following the path of the heart, which is my truth, which is guiding me to what it is that I want to create and put out into this world, and then taking action towards it. And as long as you're taking action, so it doesn't have to be massive, big jumps in the beginning. It's like taking one step every day, the 1% better than yesterday towards that vision. And thirdly, and the most important thing we spoke about is letting go of the expectation, letting go for it to happen a certain way at a certain time to get certain results. The moment you let go, what you're doing is you're trusting the process, and you're rather focusing on the journey rather than the outcome and destination. As long as you're following it with heart, you're doing it from that space, not from the space of what can I get out of it? How can I lack mindset? It's more of the abundant mindset of putting it out from the heart, because that's your calling, especially if you're changing careers or starting a new business or shifting into something new. It has to come from a heartfelt place, because that's where you find your strength. That's where you find your courage, from the heart.
And to clarify, because you talk about purpose and being heart-led, The purpose doesn't have to be to solve hunger, or doesn't have to
No.
be to resolve all of violence in the world. It doesn't have to be this like high-end purpose.
No.
It could be a simple purpose of empowering others.
100%.
It could be a simple purpose of showing us as yourself.
Powering
right?
yourself.
Exactly,
So
right?
purpose, you're right. Purpose, people think purpose is like, I need to change the world and big things. No, it can be something very purposeful and meaningful to you.
Exactly.
Right. If we want to go a layer deeper for our audience, and I think we can, right? So is understanding that we also do have a soul purpose, and we do come into this world, each and every one of us, without exception, we have a sense of soul purpose. We have something inside of us if we really tune in, and that's why we have to quiet the mind and understand what we really are meant to be doing here. And it doesn't have to be changing the world on a massive scale, but there's something. Sometimes it's just coming to be a good father, or be a good mother, or be someone that is the be example, or just to share something that is part of your creativity that can help make the world a better place on a smaller scale. It doesn't have to be big. People think big purpose. No. But it's about that soul element of the essence of who you are. And we unfortunately have lost that along the way because society has conditioned us to think that you need to attain this and that to be good enough, to be successful. But in reality, that's where most people find unhappiness. I've been very fortunate to work with very wealthy people, both in Dubai and abroad. And I can tell you that that was the big awakening for myself when I realized that, wow, these guys have attained a lot of wealth. And I'm talking like financial wealth, money, and they are miserable. Wow. That's what most people go to.
You have everything that people want and you're still miserable.
And they're miserable. And then you dig in, because I've had the pleasure to dig in, and I realize, oh, the misery is coming from the sense of the expectation that when I get that, I'm going to be happy. But in realization, when they do get it and they got more of it, they weren't, because they lost track of the true self of what they were actually meant to be doing on this planet. And the moment I get them back into alignment, into their truth, into their heart, that's where they find joy. That's where they find happiness. That's where they find fulfillment. And that is something that doesn't come from money. It really doesn't come from money. It comes from self, from our inner world, if that makes sense.
I feel like what you're saying is also even giving us a compass to know when you are going towards your alignment. I feel like we're trying, and I've done that, right? I've done that last year. I sat for hours on like, what is my true purpose? What are my values and all of this, right? I had the liberty, the chance, the freedom to do that. But you don't have to figure it out.
100%.
But what you're saying is by following joy, by following just things that make me happy.
What excites you?
This is actually your compass towards 100%. That purpose. Yeah?
Excitement puts you in a state of inspiration, and inspiration creates inspired. So excitement, anything that excites you is the language of the subconscious mind, the language of the body, the language of the soul, telling you that's your path. So follow your excitement. Do the best of your ability towards that excitement, whatever that excitement is, whatever brings you to life. There's certain things that bring you to life. That's usually your compass. And then taking action towards that, and then not setting expectations. So if you follow this mini formula, which I share with entrepreneurs and leaders, it genuinely always puts them back on the right track, right? Because sometimes they think that thing is the right thing. It's all mind, but it's not emotion. There's no feeling in the body. There's no excitement. They think it looks good, it feels good, but they're not connected. So following the excitement and then taking action towards that brings you in a state of inspiration. I call it in spirit, right? And then when you're in spirit, when you're inspired, you are getting guided to be with the right people, to do the right things, to follow what is your destiny and what you're meant to do in this world. And that's where I try and connect leaders and entrepreneurs to that.
So if I have to conclude on this conversation, because we touched about change and commitment and slowing down and the mind, and there's been a lot, right? And even purpose. I feel like what I would take away is, in order to perform, we have to follow what makes us happy. Right?
Of course.
And find this balance and this movement and momentum towards these productive moments without giving too much, because this is how we burn out. What would be your takeaway of all of this if you had to summarize everything we've said and bring it into one tangible, one comprehensible?
I think if we're speaking out to the leaders, entrepreneurs out there, I'll say what I just repeat. I'll repeat what I said again. I think the most important formula in succeeding as an entrepreneur and as a leader is the ability to be authentic in what you're doing. And authenticity comes from following what I mentioned is the excitement, right? So following that excitement, following that authenticity of who you are, not doing it for expectations of others, not doing it to impress the world, doing it for yourself and doing it for the inner being inside of you. That's the calling, right? And that's the initiation. And if they follow through with that and they take action towards that, and then they do, which is mostly difficult for most, but it is the formula, is letting go of the expectation of the monkey mind and rather focusing on the present moment and doing the best of your ability now, because all we have is this now moment. Everything falls in place. Genuinely, it does. And I've seen that in the lives that I've been very fortunate to work with amazing entrepreneurs and leaders and very successful both here and abroad. You know, that's what works. And I always just go back to what works. If it works for me, it worked for my students and clients. And then, that's the way forward.
Absolutely. It feels like we have one job in life, is to become ourselves fully.
That's it. And back home to the self, to the heart. That's what it's about.
Thank you so much, Sam. I feel so inspired.
Thank you, brother.
And I really hope this is the same for the people watching today. Yeah, there's so much that you're giving all the time. One of those conversations where I go home inspired, same as always.
Thank you, Mathieu, for having me. Thank you for the mission you're on. I'm inspired as well with the mission you're doing, brother, and the belief you have in the intention and mission that you're doing for bringing conscious leaders together. I think this world needs more conscious leaders. I genuinely feel that there is a calling and a lot of people just are not aware of it. So the more awareness, the more understanding of what you're doing as well is amazing. So thank you for what you're doing in this space, brother.
Same mission. Let's go together.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, brother.
Appreciate
Cheers.
you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
I feel really happy that I could share this conversation with Sam to each one of you. And as you've seen, as you heard, he is a wealth of knowledge and insights, and we could have talked for hours. So I invite you to go to his website, samdaghash.com, and to follow his podcast. He has 80 or something episodes where he talks about the mind, he talks about entrepreneurship, he talks about business. That's specifically for you, right? And let's continue the conversation. What I really want to do is to have more of those insightful conversations. This is part of my mission. It's not just to have those talks for myself, it's to be able to share that with people like yourself who need to hear that, who want to hear that, who want to upgrade their leadership and the way we all live. So don't forget to give it a like, a subscribe, and also share this with your colleagues, your employees, your co-founders, whoever needs to hear it, so we can continue all together and raise the consciousness for the world. Thank you again for watching.